question and answer will be on building language through play, and this will be about a half hour to 1 hour presentation, depending on your questions. We want it to be open to you to ask questions while Gina is speaking. I will be moderating. My name is Brian Kasbar from Gemini. Gina Pope will be presenting. She is our chief content officer at Gemini, and she's a master teacher. She's worked in special ed. She has 2 children herself who are on the spectrum. And then we have Emily Levine, the executive director of the Autism Society of Southeast Wisconsin. Just one preface as we're talking, this is a public forum. So anything that you talk about, which might be personal health details, will be shared publicly. This is a public forum, and these videos may be shared with people on the Autism Society of Southeast Wisconsin page, as well as Gemini page and on Facebook. So if you'd like to ask questions, at the bottom of the page, if you bring your cursor down, there is a Q&A. Those Q&As will immediately come to the attention of the panelists, and we'll read the questions and address them. So with that, Nicholas, I think you could go to the next panel, and we'll let Gina start.
All right. I happen to miss the questions. I'm going to rely on you, Brian and Nicholas, to let me know that there's been a question asked.
Sure.
Great, thanks. Okay, so yeah, my name is Gina, and I'm really excited about today's topic. Having 2 children myself on the spectrum, I've found myself, I have a child that's 13, and I have another son who is 9. And with my 13-year-old, I realized a little late in the game, I guess you would say, that play was something I wasn't focusing enough on. I realized that he was 12, and I'd been so focused on his speech therapy and ABA therapy, getting behaviors in order, that we just didn't play. And he didn't really have a lot of appropriate play skills that once he was ready to socialize, there was no common ground for his peers. He was very behind. So I'm very passionate about this topic. I think play is a great thing to start talking about when our kids are very, very young. So in getting started, I wanted to refer back to one of the first webinars we did in Dr. Maria Gilmore, who's a BCBAD. She has a little video, an animated video called The 3 M's. And that is language, knowing your child's language level, speaking to them at that level. We have that available on the Gemini site, as well as Autism Society has made that video available as well. I highly recommend taking a look at it if you did miss that webinar. But moving forward, knowing the level of language is important because we want to make sure we talk at a level they can understand, and then expect their language to be, we have to set the expectation. If you're speaking 2-word phrases during play, I want to bring that out. If they're speaking single words, we don't want to have too demanding of an expectation on them. So just really understanding that is important as we move forward in this. Okay, general tips. We want to let our children lead us. Often we have a goal in mind, even in play, right? We're always so vigilantly focused on what we're trying to get from our children that we don't realize that they can actually lead us. Follow their lead. They will give you an insight to what is interesting to them, and you'll get just much further that way. So let them lead as much as possible, as long as it is appropriate. In other words, if we're playing with cars, we don't want them just spinning a wheel. So don't follow suit and start, modeling inappropriate behavior, which I've been known to do in the past before I was educated. But to actually go ahead and model pushing a car, even if they're spinning a wheel, and just encourage them, push, zoom, zoom, and just have a good time with it. And then avoid too many demands, because it can take away from the play. Again, the goal is just to play and have fun with our kids. Model language and the play expectations for your children. If they're not saying Zoom right away, just keep saying it. Maybe over the course of the next couple of weeks, you might get to hear a beautiful Zoom from them, or an So just keep at it. Allow wait time. If you are doing Zoom, keep pushing. Have them see them pushing, maybe even handing them pushing. See if it comes out. Give it a wait time. Anytime you ask them a question, also give them wait time. Their processing speed can be slow. It doesn't mean they didn't hear you. They just need to process it, take a step, take a moment, and then they will respond. But if you've gone on to the next thing, we'll lose that opportunity. So wait time is very important, even in play.
Gina, if one point which I like to make that I didn't know until I really started looking at the research is in something like Zoom, most of the research says that it's far easier for a child to make a sound while he's moving a body part than it is to do it without him moving his body part. So when she's saying, take your hand over their hand and move the car as you're saying the car is zooming or zoom or whatever sound you want to make, it's incredibly important neurologically that those two get paired up, that gross motor movement, that large movement of their body and the sound production. It's somehow easier.
Correct, and you'll notice, those of you who use Gemini, that is why we in our verbal imitation, the leader or the model of the imitation portion is always giving sounds with those body movements, because that's the exact reason we do it, because it is much easier. So that's a very good point, Brian. Thank you. Yeah, very good. When getting ready to sit down with your child or go outside with your child, try to provide two play options is a good starting point. We don't want to overwhelm them with too many choices. And we also don't want to just give them one choice. They like to feel in control. So if you give them two options and they get to pick, you're already starting ahead of the game. Also set a timer if needed. One of my sons didn't need it, but the other one did. And it wasn't so much that it wasn't playing fun and that he couldn't enjoy it, but he just had that personality. He needed to know a beginning and an end. So, and play is a lot of times very novel to our children. It's not innate. It's not something, they do willingly, like a neurotypical child often does. Some of them just really want to know, this is the expectation. When this timer goes off, I'm done, regardless if it's enjoyable or not. With that, we'll go on to the next slide, please, Nicholas.
There you go, Gina.
Thank you. So, types of play. This is actually taken from a developmental building block. It's called speech therapy through play. It's a movement, if you will. And what they've done is these SLPs have identified these 5 areas of play that you can use speech therapy within. So I've kind of just taken those, I've extrapolated those areas and I've briefly explained them here. So functional play, this is that early stage of development when they're actually just investigating objects. Sometimes they're even mouthing, taking their rattle, shaking it, or putting it in their mouth. And they're literally just learning about these objects, how they work and how they're used. Construction play is the next step, which is building things. And it could be Legos and Duplos and puzzles and all those things, but it can also be just building a fort or pitching a tent, anything very pragmatic, very natural, anything that has to do with parts that can be taken apart and put back together. The next is outdoor and movement play. These are involving physical movement. Now, some of our children do have a lot of low tone issues, so understanding what they're capable of doing. And young children, they don't hop on one foot well. Even neurotypical kids, has nothing to do with disability. So just knowing where they are movement wise will be important. And that is actually why it falls a little bit later in the order of development here. Number 4 is games with rules, gameplay and rules, board games, even movement games that actually have rules, like Simon Says, etc. That's level 4. And then you have your symbolic and dramatic and pretend play as number 5. Today we're going to look at the first 3. We're going to cover the first 3. And I believe I'll be back on Thursday to continue 4 and 5. And then we'll also talk about how to, at that stage of, of development, we'll start introducing peer play and interaction. Are there any questions so far?
Emily, how about you? Do you have any comments for what you noticed with your son as you played in general rules?
Me?
Emily.
Oh, Emily, I'm sorry.
No, we did. I mean, he did a lot of the wheel spinning, and he would. We called it like making parking lots. He would take all the toys out of his toy box and line them up.
Yeah.
And he liked to arrange things, and we pretty much went with it. He was very into Thomas the Tank Engine and his earliest interactive play was, it was kind of recreating the Thomas stories with his train.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we found in general for us that the more we could work concepts into play, the more Max accepted them. And the more that we could use things he liked in play, the longer he would do them. So
Yeah.
our goal was to completely hoodwink him and never have him realize he was in therapy.
Exactly.
So
Oh,
that's one of the good things about play.
that's absolutely. Okay. Um, are we on functional play?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so what I have here is a lot of pictures of wonderful cause and effect toys. Cause and effect toys are a phenomenal place to start. If you're sitting there, your kid has very limited play skills. I'm here to tell you, both of my children, it was like pulling teeth. I don't know if it's the electronic age, what the reasoning behind it. They because I have two older children that are neurotypical as well, so I can see the vast difference. And they literally did not come out innately just curious or wanting to play appropriately with toys. And cause and effect was a saving grace for me, because of the effects that they have, the lights that they may see, or by pushing and something happening, that natural effect is really a built-in reinforcement. So these, and again, if you can find something that your child is interested in, um, then they start exploring, their sensory system is heightened, they get that feedback. You can play with them with these and teach them simple commands like push and turn. And so cause and effect toys are fantastic. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. This is what we're all dealing with. This is why we're having the
So yeah, I'm really sorry. My youngest just came in here, and I'm assuming my husband is disappeared. He was swimming with them. I don't know what happened. Um, okay, so anyway, cause and effect toys. So that's a great place to start.
And Gina, I found these were very helpful for me too when I had Max. Even just with cause and effect of knocking something down, just having a ball in a little block and trying to throw the ball at the big block and knock it down. Anything where he could do something it would have an effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's almost like the even Sinjin in the colors videos, the where he just knocks all the different color blocks down
Yeah.
repeatedly. That's hysterical. And that's a cause and effect. Kids tend to do this too, like if they're sitting on their high chair and they start throwing spaghetti at you, it's a cause and effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But knocking down, for Max, especially since he might not have had the motor skills to build, knocking down was incredibly enjoyable for him. So
yes.
Daddy builds a tower, Max knocks it down.
Right. And getting our sensory system involved in it as well. Like you said, so you have the movement in there, but that little basket right there, I actually have that entire set of little musical instruments. And when they make, when they do something and they get a noise, and my children as well, very young, did not have a lot of dexterity or coordination. So just being able to hold that maraca and get that sound, or to be able to shake a tambourine, hit a drum, whether it be with their fingers or the drumstick that came with it, those simple things can really awaken their desire to explore toys. If you have children like mine who really just had no desire, it was actually building, I actually had to build, and working with them, that intrinsic motivation, that motivation inside them to actually want to play with toys. It was very odd for me. Like I said, my older two, I never had that issue with, but they really just didn't want to. And Brian, you make a good point about the knocking down. If your child can't stack, that is a great place to start. But when you think about cause and effect, cause and effect toys, these are things that you can call your child in and have maybe 5 different things constructed, and they just literally go and knock them down. And then maybe you sing the cleanup song and maybe you have them help you clean up. That's up to you. But I mean, that is therapy. And try to get a sound as they're moving, going crash, bang, boom, whatever you want, and to build that language into it. And believe it or not, guys, that's therapy. Isn't that crazy? That's
Yeah.
how it should be.
Gina, it's one of the things that now, having a child who's in his 20s and having been involved and looking at the research, was probably the biggest shift in my thinking. Is I used to think of play as one of the lowest levels of therapy or not therapy at all, when in fact, when you talk to the experts, play is the highest level of therapy. It's the most effective therapy. The great artistic therapists manage to figure out a way to make things play.
Yes.
uh, so
Yes,
and
the first one to admit, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't till I realized, yes, JT is autistic. He doesn't care to be in big crowds. I care more that he doesn't have a best friend than he seems to mind. But honestly, I didn't realize what a disservice I did to him without building these skills much younger when I saw that he could not play with kids. Therefore, not only does he not have a real intrinsic desire to be around, peer groups, but he doesn't have a way to really interact with them. Forget the fact that his communication skills are below average. I mean, he just didn't even have to play, and that to me was very disheartening. It was an eye-opening experience, and so I just did my best to really try to make sure I didn't make that same mistake with Andrew.
and what may be helpful here, we really would like it to be interactive. If any of the attendees would like to go down at the bottom, if you hover over and type in a question and let us know the level of your child, Gina is a phenomenal resource to get creative and say this may be a good thing for your child. One other thing I want to point out, and this is a technical term, but it's an easy concept, and it's called joint attention. And what it is that therapists have noticed that if a child isn't verbal, the biggest skill you can develop to develop language is a thing called joint attention, which is that something happens, they look at it, they look at you for a reaction, and then they look back at it. And the reason this is so important is because it recognizes that there are two people and it recognizes that you want to have a joint experience.
Yes.
It's the building block of communication. So a child who wants to look and see you smile at a thing go down will want to have more sophisticated interplay with you later, and that's builds the desire for language. So literally, the huge specialists at UCLA, which is one of the biggest centers for research, all say that joint attention, that seeing something, looking for your reaction, and looking back at it.
Yes.
Once you have that, you get language. So many of these games, like knocking down blocks, can do that. When he knocks it down, you just go, "Oh my!" and he looks at you, and you look at the blocks. These are actually very sophisticated skills you're building.
Yes. And what's interesting is if right away your child isn't giving you that joint attention, in other words, they're just going through the motions and playing with you, you keep at it because they will build in that they will learn because at least for my children, and I already mentioned to you, JT was much older when I tried this with him. They didn't even recognize the fact that they that not that you're not playing with them, obviously they know that, but to recognize the fact that we can have a shared moment in this type of setting. So if play-based therapy is not something common to your child, it may take a while, but it will come. And you hit the nail on the head, Brian, because that joint attention is what you're seeking. And eventually, as you have more of these moments, more of these play sessions with your child, it's going to become this engagement where they will start to look at you. They will care what your emotion is at that moment. Are you feeling the same? Even if it's egocentric and do they think this is fun like I do? They'll start to look at you. I may not happen right away, but they'll get there. So it all happens through play. I love that point, Brian. And yeah, you're right on, spot on. Yes.
All right, next slide, Nicholas.
So you should be looking at Cogsley, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Go
So
back, Nicholas. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted anyone else who has a story or a favorite cause and effect toy that they could share with the group. Even if you just want to type it, we can read it for you if you'd like to share. For me, Cogsley. Cogsley was a favorite for my children, and I love Cogsley because it teaches a lot of language, like turn, teaches colors, whether it's the purple ear or the green ear you're going to twist. So Cogsley is amazing. Loved him. It also taught early phonics. So this was a great toy that I wanted to share with the group that I absolutely love.
Yeah, so one of our participants said that marble runs are good ones. And my neurotypical 8-year-old just got one for his birthday yesterday, and daddy had a lot of fun with it. Obviously, if you have a young child that puts things in their mouth, putting marbles in their mouth is dangerous. But a marble run in general, if you don't know what it is, it's like a track or tubes with different spinners and different diverters and different loop-the-loops, and you put a marble in and you can create a different path which comes down. So it's very cause and effect. It's a higher cognitive level. Um, but even to the most basic of just drop it down the tube and it lands.
Yeah, if you construct it for them, then it's
Yeah,
literally just a cause and effect toy. Yeah. And if
yeah,
you change
thank you for that.
the angles of the tunnels and stuff, they can start to learn actually about a million different things. They're so visual. They can actually see the slope. They can start, they can start actually learning a little bit about geometry there in science. So
Yeah, and one of the panel or the people also said that the go fishing a bit difficult for the young ones, but great hand over hand opportunity where you have those little. If I remember from when they were little, there are these little fish that spin, and you put
yep.
your thing in, and the fish bite. Yeah, those are all great.
Yes, those are fantastic toys. Um, anyone else like to share a
And,
favorite?
if you look at some of the really old-fashioned things that happen, even things like gross motor mirror and imitation, patty cake does that.
Yeah.
You know, um, so a lot of the old classic things that neurotypical children have done for centuries are there for a reason because they build those critical skills at that right time.
We want to speak about old fashioned. You know what my oldest son's favorite cause and effect toy was? Old school. Do you guys remember that a vacuum that popped up the balls when you
Yep.
put that? That was his favorite. Absolutely loved it. So absolutely. So yeah, talk about old fashioned toys. Can we go on to the next slide then? We'll go ahead and
Sure.
go on to the next, which you kind of
Construction play.
yeah, construction play. So what you mentioned, Brian, actually um, combined the marble construction is actually a construction play with a cause and effect twist. So I love that.
Yeah.
And here, most construction play at the younger levels does combine both parts. So even if they're building, let's say, a car, a simple, 8-piece, maybe Lego Junior or Duplo set, then they get to actually move it around and drive it, whatnot. So construction play have to have a little bit more fine motor dexterity. Now, one thing I like to point out about construction play is again, with my neurotypical kids, I could like dump out a big old container of Legos and they would just have at it. Their imaginations would kick in, they'd start clicking things together, and they'd start from nothing. This is not as easy for children with ASD to start from nothing. So, my recommendation in beginning of construction play would be actually to build something very simple. If you look to the far right in the visual called fine motor development with blocks, I actually didn't put that there for fine motor. I put it there more because you want to give them something and ask them to replicate you. Like let's build a bridge and you just have like a 3-block bridge. Ooh, can you build a bridge like this? That, just very simple and see if they can duplicate it. We have to take a step back sometimes, especially children with ASD who don't necessarily, and some do, some have great imaginations. I'm not saying that some don't, but for the most part, they literally have to be taught how to work with these items. So, and how to play with these items rather. So actually having them replicate things, or you guys taking turns building a bigger construction is a much better place to start. And then eventually you'll get to the point where you'll start creating like the train track there in the center. And they will start to play on their own and with you with their little Lego sets. But in the beginning, I definitely would recommend showing them and nurturing that building phrasing.
I just would want to insert here that also there are kids that are going to play just in very atypical ways, and that I really don't like the word inappropriate, I guess, because um,
What is
my
appropriate?
son's a little older, and I
Sure.
get, I think back to the number of corrections he got as a little kid, um, because he wasn't doing things the way I did them or that I thought he should do them.
That's a good
I
point.
just would put a caveat out there to be always loving and accepting and respectful of different ways of play. Um, you know, that's something that you can even talk about depending on where your child is, there's different ways to play, and here's some way that his peers are playing, it is important that they get to know that there's other ways to use these materials. And
Yes. No, I'm completely behind you.
okay,
And
I just
no,
was a little uncomfortable with
no, I completely agree. So actually, let me go ahead and define what I mean when I say an appropriate play. So
Okay.
actually, spinning a wheel, I use that as an example, in itself isn't inappropriate. I guess when it would become inappropriate in this particular setting, when you're trying to have those joint attention moments, as Brian pointed out, would be if they're doing a repetitive motion, like spinning a tire so much that they're stimming, that they're actually not there. They can't be in that moment to play. So inappropriate is literally just a behavior that's going to cause them not to be able to, I guess, what's the word? Where they're not playing anymore, they're actually just stimming, I guess would be.
One of the things I would say, and I loved it when you said, is let your child follow, because instead of forcing them into our world, I would often, and by the way, this is a very overlooked thing. It seems obvious to most of us who work with children all the time, but get on the floor, get at their eye level. Um, and so Max, we had a big wooden floor in our basement, and Max had lots of cars, and he did parking lot. Most of our children with ASD do; they line things up. And so I would just lay down with him
Mhm.
and try to figure out what he's doing. Stretch your mind. Try to figure out where he is. Try to get in there a little bit. And sometimes I noticed that at first he was like, get away. But then the more I paid attention to him and the more I looked and the more I really cared what his motivation was, I remember he would look up and smile, a really naughty smile, like that somehow I was catching him doing something, or no, I'm not going to let you into my world. And then he would. That little smile was the first crack. That was the chink in the armor that I could get in. Um, and sometimes that's what we would do. We just line them all up, and then I would find out that, oh, he was lining all the ones with silver bumpers up. He was sorting them in a certain way, and I would do that, or I would challenge him. So um, I love the idea of taking the lead. Um, there is a goal to get eventually to pretend to play, where you're actually using a doll. I hate to
Yeah.
use that word appropriately, but we're using the doll the way a neurotypical child would use a doll, just to create that baseline.
Well,
Um,
also using a hairbrush as a microphone. I mean, that's a goal, right? I mean, so and it's the expansion of your imagination. But just one last thing too, in regards to inappropriate, I hope we all remember the number one thing for me is, and it was the first listed in the slide, is to follow their lead. So Brian's absolutely right. It's hard to, you cannot go into any play-based activity with your plan in concrete. You have a goal that might be in concrete, like you want them to at least, express certain words, or you might have a goal that you want him to, play with you, next to you, or engage with you for 5 minutes. It's okay to have a goal in concrete, but your plan needs to be in the sand, because it may be you laying next to them and playing parking lot and asking them where they want the red car to be placed or something like that. But so I hope that I didn't offend anybody. So yes, absolutely.
Gina, you had a great point in one of the further ones, like where you were playing a card game of some sort, and that wasn't working, and then you just changed it into let's throw the cards up in the air because your child did. Let's
Absolutely.
okay, let's have fun with that.
Yes.
So
And then
that's how you follow the lead.
like,
Okay, I wanted to play cards. Now we're not.
you got your smile, I got my giggle. And so
Yeah.
I that was gold. And so I went with it. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So always have your plan in the sand. And again, you're giving them choices, you're letting them lead you. So and they're, I mean, inappropriate in play. There really isn't, unless of course bad behavior, throwing things would be inappropriate.
Or dangerous, or just flat out dangerous. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, okay. So but thank you so much, Emily, for that, because I we do need to be sensitive to that. Okay. Next.
And then for people who do use Gemini, we have different children. We have models of children playing with games in the way those games were designed, so a child could watch those videos and prep.
Yes, and honestly, because I was obviously a heavy Gemini user with both of my children, I would honestly usually front load before, because again, my kids had very limited play skills. I would literally front load, which means I would just show them the Gemini videos before I presented. So I would show them the stacking of the blocks, or I would show them pushing a car, putting in items if I was going to work on a shape sorter, that kind of stuff. And I actually showed them the video before we had a play session. For me, it just set expectation. I was worried in the beginning with Gemini that if I did that, then it wouldn't just be free and play. But no, I was able to let them lead, and it actually just gave, I think it gave them some sense of comfort. So yeah, you're right. Gemini was a great tool to front load all that information.
So anybody, we had some great recommendations on the others. Does anybody here have toy or game recommendations they find have been particularly helpful? Emily, how about you? Did you have any specific toys?
You know, it's been so long.
Yeah, I know they all change.
I'm just turned 32.
I go into
It's far
Toys R
removed.
Us now. Yeah, and it's very different than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, well, let's go on to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah.
Movement and play.
Yeah. This was just like, there's juniors and anyway, toy recommendation. The next slide would be movement and play, just to get our bodies moving. And Brian already alluded to it. If we get our bodies in motion, it's a natural way to get the language, going. So in here, you'll see these wonderful little faces. I love these little kids. So movement and play can be anything. It can even be simply blowing bubbles and having the kids popping them. Again, you just want to have fun. So maybe you presented a couple options and they wanted to do bubbles. That's great. Just go chase the bubbles and pop them. You see this little girl here is doing some little gross motor imitation of her mom. And then you have these little kiddos on their feet just going through a ladder. So just to get up and moving. The difference here, honestly, the only difference here in movement and play is, when you go outside with your kids versus just watching them play on the playground or pushing them on the swing, is just to get a little bit more engagement and maybe expose them to something different, something new, something fun, a different way to move their body. Imitation is a great way to judge if you're not sure exactly your child's ability movement wise. If you want to play, maybe the older kids are playing tag or something. Can they run in a straight line? Can they, dodge back and forth? If your child doesn't have that coordination, it's good to be aware. If you use Gemini, of course, we have all of those imitation videos. Those are a great place to start. It's also a great place. That's what I used to do with my kids. I'd stand there with them and do the movements with them. Moving is, my son is 6 feet tall at 14 years old. He just turned 14, and he has, he wears a size 13 shoe. He grew very tall, very quickly. And I know, Brian, you can relate. And he's uncoordinated, and because he's not into sports, and again, I already mentioned to you about the whole play relate on the curve with him. The imitation videos were essential for me. Also, our sing along videos for Gemini, and the reason it was important is remember those moments I mentioned to you where I realized how far behind he was. Actually, at 12 years old, that was with Go Noodle. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Go Noodle. There's an app, it's a Noodle TV as well, and it's all movement. It's a phenomenal program. Your typical kids would, or kids that have been in dance or something, they'd love it, and they get to dance along. My son loves Michael Jackson, and we even had an Xbox game for Michael Jackson for him to dance with it. Now, obviously, we encourage him, and he would just move to the music, and we were clapping. But I just realized in those moments that I really needed to back it up, and we needed to go back to things, to movement like wheels on the bus. And if you're happy and clap your hands. And it sounds silly at 12 years old, but at the time he was 12, but we really had to, because if we didn't back it up and get him to at least be able to follow along with the Gemini videos and stuff, we were never going to get him to where he could do Go Noodle or these like a Dance Revolution stuff, I guess. So we started there. And so I guess my encouragement at this point is just have them move their bodies, start learning about where they're at developmentally, get them moving. Excuse me.
And Gina, one of the things, and we have a recommendation from the last slide from one of the parents. It said squidges or suction cup toys, great for building these. You can use them in the car on the windows. And she said she loves Go Noodle as well.
Uh,
But yeah, anything you can do in the car like that is fantastic,
yeah.
obviously. Um, and also with movement and play, I just found I had been a singer in the past,
Mm,
and something that you can play with tones too for expressive speech. If all they're doing is producing sounds, if you say, have them imitate ba, or you could say ba ba, kind of what mothers naturally do with neurotypical children as they're developing language. It's that babbling, the
mm,
going back and forth, seeing if a child will do it, but you can do it in a sing-songy way,
yes.
or just do a ba ba ba, and then see if they can do that. If it's not tonal, it's just beat and melody. So anyway, those are all different things. The whole idea is these are nonverbal ways to start that communication path and that emotional bonding and emotional connection and the desire to communicate more. Because once they start connecting with you, they want to connect more.
Yes.
And a lot of kids love music. I mean, all kids seems like are responding to music, and some of our guys that don't talk can sing, and
Yeah.
will even respond to instructions that are sung at them better than they will at just spoken instructions. Or it just seems like it really taps into a different pathway in their brain um, that maybe they have more access to. And we use music all the time, dancing and singing, and just you know, there's a lot of music that has story and uh, labeling and imitation, all different things you can use to build vocabulary and build pre-literacy skills um, as part of using music as well as movement.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. It'll give you that
Yeah,
play, the gross motor, the labeling of the body parts. It's a winner.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way, even me, I still remember, I mean, this is, cassette tapes back in the day, but I still remember multiplication rap. That's how I learned my
Yeah.
multiplication tables,
And,
right?
and although it's not music, I still know how many days each month has because of 30 days has September, April, June, and November. It is a weird way that the brain processes. I studied for exams all through college and don't remember of it. I probably remember every lyric to every Donna Summer song from the 70s, totally useless, but it came in music. It's stuck in my memory.
Absolutely.
So
And
there
if
I just dated myself.
we claim to hate, we know all the words too, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Music is magical for doing that.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, no, this music and movement and play is, and that's why we, a good portion of our preschool curriculum is wrapped around all that. So there's reason for it. So this is great. Um, and then, is there anyone who wanted to share in the last slide?
We'll just wait for people to type. These might take a bit to type.
Okay. And just for a good news report is that JT can do some of the easier Go Noodles already. So he's doing really well.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, I just wanted to build on what Brian was saying earlier about joint attention, about how important that is, because for one thing, that's a very solid diagnostic indicator is if a child doesn't point.
Right.
It's very reliable. And there's another, and I don't know if it's part of joint attention, but there's a thing called social referencing, which is when the child looks back at the mom or dad to see if the mom or dad is watching and to gauge their reaction. And that's one way little children learn about safety
Yes.
is if they're wandering away from you and they look back and they see you are smiling and relaxed, they will keep going. If they look back and they see you looking horrified and screaming no, they will stop. And that's something that my little boy didn't do, and it was very dangerous because he would just keep going right into the street or right into the water.
Right.
So that is a really important thing to cultivate.
And then this gets a little more technical, and it's a theory. The research isn't conclusive on this, but there are thoughts that some of the children don't understand that what they think isn't known by you. So the idea that their brain has a separate bits of information than ours does, because communication is necessary. If we are all thinking the same thing, there's no need to point. You know what I'm looking at.
Right.
Um, and there was and this is one of those reasons that you're trying to get this idea that we're all separate. We all have different things to contribute. We want to talk to each other. But they had one test where they had a little puppet go out on the stage, and the puppet put a gift in a box, and then the puppet left. And another puppet came and took that gift out of the box and put it in the closet. And then that puppet left. And the old puppet came in, and they asked the children, where will this puppet look?
Right.
And the children who were neurotypically developing all knew that he would look in the box because they knew what he thought. He only saw it in the box. The children with ASD would often say that he would look in the closet because he should know what they know.
Yep.
So this pointing and joint attention is a way to separate us. Oh, are you looking differently than I am? Do you know something I don't know? Are you telling me? These are all things that we're trying to get. And one of the other things I wanted to add, which is very interesting, and this is more kind of emerging research, is that uh, the children with ASD have a larger part of their brain that leads towards daydreaming or just being in kind of in their own world. It's called
Default network.
the default network. And one reason why gross motor is so important, you cannot daydream when you're on a balance beam. You
Flailing
can't.
around. Yeah.
Your body literally will not let you. Right. So, and you, when you're in that default network, when you're daydreaming, you don't communicate with other people. So, in order, since our children feel so comfortable, my wife used to always say, Max is just so much more interesting than the rest of us. So he likes to stay with himself. If we want to talk to him, if we want to enjoy him, sometimes getting him movement. That's why hippotherapy is so good. You're always kind of getting your balance when you're on a horse or a balance beam or any of this walking and talking. All of these gross motor actions almost literally prohibit the child going into that daydream state. So there's a lot of neurology behind all of these things that therapists do, all these recommendations that Gina has. It's fascinating the more you get to see it, but it comes down to some of the common sense, like kids learn better when they're moving and laughing. They just do. I can give you all the dopamine and the serotonin and all the neural pathways, but it's just when they're happy and moving, they learn better.
Yeah. And honestly, I really just started, for my kids, it was more about health. They'd be, it was, you want to keep them active, right? And I worry, both of my kiddos, you go through those chunky ages, and they were getting a little chunky. So, but it goes way beyond just wanting to be healthy, wanting them to be a good, healthy weight. It really has to do with neurology, and movement is, it's enjoyable. And I will tell you from my experiences is with my boys, get them out of the house. Even we do things inside, it's once we go outside, it's almost like I can feel when we come back, inside, or we've had our day, it just feels so much more like a memory. We could just been in our backyard or taking a walk around the block. And it's just amazing just how that little venture, their spirits really seem to be uplifted.
Yeah, and one of the playthings we did is we would take Max and his sister, we had two with autism, to a large department store like a Walmart or a Target or a Kmart. Because they have so many different things, and we knew that we were studying barnyard animals, for instance. So now let's go look for all the pigs on towels, pigs on craft things, pigs on whatever. And then they're walking around the store and they're looking for pigs, and it looks like a game, but it's not.
Scavenger.
Hoodwinking them.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, once this whole, social distancing ends.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. You could walk around the house looking for all the things that are red or whatever, or out in the neighborhood, in the backyard, wherever you're allowed to go, depending on local rules. So if are there any more slides, or if there are no more questions from anybody, we could wrap it up. But we're free to answer any questions here. Again, you just hover over the bottom of your screen and there'll be a Q&A or chat panel that comes up and you can type questions. Do we have another Zoom meeting coming up? Yes, we do. And let me just get that next one.
It'll be Thursday, Brian.
Yes.
Same time, and we've swapped out the titles so we will to accommodate the change in schedule. And so instead of waiting till next week, I'll be doing the continuation of tonight on Thursday.
Okay. So we will be doing the play, and Gina, just so I'm sure, we will be talking about early social skills and using play to build social skills.
And we'll be utilizing those last two areas of play, mostly in incorporating in all of this, even the movement, incorporating all this into early social and peer play with peers, siblings. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see if we have any other comments. I went off screen here for a second.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Nicholas, can you tell me? I can't seem to get into this.
People are thanking Gina.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can figure out
I've got it.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, and I may have a Q&A here. How
Oh.
long did your children attend to a cause and effect toy when they were 3 to 4 years old? I am a special education teacher and have a 3-year-old. I feel like I always expect more than I should for attending, although I do get excited about even 5 seconds of attention.
Absolutely, you should. It's a celebration. Yes. Yeah, I mean, they're that young and their attention span is that low. I would say in your situation, you might have obviously more than 2 options around you, but no. And I get it as a teacher, sometimes it can be very disheartening, or because you know where they should be a little clearer than some, then maybe you should know. So yes, it can get expectations can soar really high, but no, 5 seconds is fantastic.
Yeah, Max, I was looking for 1 second. I was looking for
Right. Yeah.
really brief. If I got 5 seconds, I got 5 seconds of joint attention, I would have been 3 years ahead, I think. I don't know if I get 5 seconds of joint attention from my neurotypical teens, honestly, but yeah. But yeah, so I just think anything, just getting that attention is the goal. That's the goal you're looking for. You spend a half an hour to get those 2 or 3 seconds, it's great.
And I have just posted the Zoom link for the next meeting.
Great. Can I tell the parents one last thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to just let everybody know with this distant learning, just a little bit of a follow-up. I know Rochelle, she already posted them on there, but I did want to let everyone know that if you're trying to find some unique and fun yet educational, maybe supplemental materials for things that are coming home for e-learning for your kids, I highly recommend Different Roads. It's called Different Roads, your ASD authority since 1995 here. And it's actually a catalog, and it has games and toys, and it has curriculums and assessments and stuff like that too. But you do not have to be a therapist or a teacher to order. You can be a parent. I know right now a lot of parents are having problems finding things on Amazon, or they're, making the prices just skyrocket right now, right? They're really just gouging us for any type of school curriculum. So Different Roads is a great publication, and also Super Duper is a great publication. And I was able to order today many different things for my kiddos, and it was no problem. And then, of course, Pinterest. Pinterest can be your best friend. You don't want to buy their curriculum. Pinterest can give you tons of ideas. So if you just go there and, what's some motor movement games, go to Pinterest. They'll tell you a million of them. And, sometimes those parents are more clever than any published game. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, then thank you, everybody. We're already at 6:50 or 8:51. So thank you again. And this will be the end for tonight. And if you see in the chat, there is a link with the Zoom 272051224, which is this copy, but it's also posted in the Autism Society Southeast Wisconsin's Facebook page.
Great.
Okay.
Also, Gemini users, you can still reach me at gpope@gemini.org. If you have any questions about the videos I mentioned that you could create. We also have a lot of quick starts that cover play. So anything I can do to help, feel free to email me.
Okay. Thanks
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.